Hey team, welcome back to another incredible episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader Podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell, and today I'm joined by the president of Teleos, John Godbehere. John, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. I've enjoyed the last 15, 16 minutes with a chance to kind of get to know you a little bit and get caught up on your background. I'm looking forward to getting to share more of that with the listeners here today. But kick us off with the answer to the opening question, which is, what does it mean for you to be intentional?
First off, I always like to define a topic. So when we were kind of talking about this podcast, first thing is intentional. Look at the definition. And the simplest definition and what works for me is something done on purpose that is not accidental. One word for me to describe intentional is deliberate. And I just like that. It's deliberate. You're doing something on purpose and it's not accidental. So for me, we might get to this, but my previous role before joining Teleos Ag Solutions was in the military. I spent 20 years in the Navy flying helicopters. So a lot of processes and the way I think and what I try to implement at Teleos really falls back to what I've learned throughout my time in the Navy. So being deliberate for me is about clear and direct messaging. So,
I like that.
Really, it's providing the employees with exactly what I need and eliminating ambiguity. Looking at that concept and the way we implement that in the Navy is through what we call CRM, Crew Resource Management. And there's 7 tenets in CRM using an acronym DAM class. It goes back to a tenet of naval aviation, CRM, Crew Resource Management.
Yeah.
And what that is, it's a process to improve safety, it reduces errors, and it enhances performance. It's a deliberate process-oriented approach to being deliberate and being intentional. So the 7 tenets of CRM uses an acronym DAM class: decision-making, assertiveness, mission analysis, communication, leadership, adaptability, flexibility, and situational awareness. So, you look at those concepts and implementing those tenets really creates a deliberate process which helps to eliminate any ambiguity, and it provides that clear, direct messaging both up and down the chain of command. That's
cool. That's really cool. Can we run through those one more time? So it's decision making.
Yes.
Right.
And assertiveness.
Assertiveness. So describe assertiveness, because I think this is I know my interpretation based on what I think it means, but can you just define that for us a little bit more?
So it can take on several different looks. So thinking about from a position of leadership, there's a lot of Indians, but sometimes there can only be one chief. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to put your foot down and say, this is what we're going to do. However, in the Navy, just like any organization, there are subject matter experts both up and down the chain of command. So, and someone might have information or more knowledge on a subject than someone else. And that is when that person or group of an individual needs to step up and be assertive. It doesn't matter where you are. Anyone can be assertive. And as a leader, you have to understand that and sometimes listen to your experts.
Yeah, I like that, because I know a lot of organizations get off on this word empowerment. Like, we want to make our people feel empowered. And I think that's good, but we don't often know what that really means. And it's hard to, like, hey, if you've got an idea, you're empowered to speak up. That, in theory, that's a good idea. Like, that sounds nice. I think intentionally speaking, since we're talking about intentional leadership, I don't think it gets the job done. Personal opinion, right? But when you start talking about being assertive and like, hey, the expectation is if you know something that can help us grow the business, make better decisions, run the team better. Like if you have information, you need to speak up and say it, right? In the military complex, I assume this means like if you have information that can help us progress or save lives or move the mission forward, right? Then you're expected to speak up.
Yes. In the aircraft, it doesn't do any good to sit on your hands and be quiet.
Right.
You need to speak up. And if you see something or hear something or have concerns, it's your responsibility to be assertive and to voice your opinion for the greater good. And in a civilian organization, just as you went back to empowerment, you always talk about empowerment, but it's up to the leader to actually open up their ears and listen.
Right.
And if you have to demonstrate empowerment as a leader through actions, not just words.
Yeah. Good. I love it. All right. So decision making, assertiveness, and then you said mission focus.
Mission analysis.
Analysis. Okay.
Yeah,
good.
Understanding what we're doing
Yep.
so that everyone on the team is on the same page. That they know what the mission is, and we're directing our focus to the ultimate goal.
Beautiful. Love it. And then the C is?
Communication.
Communication. Okay.
In the military, we like to talk about that communication both up and down the chain of command. So it's important for everyone below me to be able to hear and understand my message, but it's just as important for me to hear messaging and thoughts and concerns from everyone below me. We go back to, you play the telephone game a lot where you line up a group of people and you whisper in a sentence or a phrase in their ear, and it goes through 10 or 15 people, and it's always interesting to see what comes out at the end.
Right.
In the CRM process, the goal is to have the same message or phrase from start to finish.
Right. I like that. I like that. Okay. And so then the L?
Leadership. Everyone can be a leader, Mark. Everyone.
Absolutely. I agree. I concur 100%. All right. And then the A?
Adaptability, flexibility. Yes. You got to roll with the punches. When you have a roadblock, something goes wrong, you have to adapt to those changing conditions. You have to be flexible.
Yeah.
That leads to success. If you're rigid in your approach and there's only one way to accomplish a goal, more than likely you're bound to fail.
Right. Yep. And then the last one?
Situational awareness. Being cognizant and aware of your surroundings at all times.
Very cool. I love it. It's going to sound like we decided to make that a class. That was completely, we had no idea that was coming when we hit record here this afternoon. But I thought this is really cool because when you think about it from a tactical, practical standpoint, a lot of our listeners are thinking like, hey, like I got whatever, I need to get my team all pulling in the same direction. And we got to sort through some of these communication issues or delivery issues or other operational issues, right? And like, give me something that I can actually implement. And this is actually pretty implementable.
It is. It's very important. It's worked for me my whole career. It's something I've tried to pull out best practices when I've learned in the military and implement these now in my civilian role. And really the importance, I always try to look back at real life examples. And I remember one boss that we had, and we'd have staff meetings. So a large group of us sitting around a table on a weekly basis. And this leader would give us his, thoughts or kind of what he wanted us to do. But kind of due to a lack of clear, concise messaging, him being intentional, saying, this is what I want done. It was a very roundabout way of telling the staff what he wanted to get accomplished.
Yeah.
So he would leave, and after every meeting, the staff would sit around the table and look at each other, trying to figure out what exactly he meant and he wanted us to do. So implementing these CRM principles and being deliberate and
Right.
having this process really eliminates that ambiguity,
Yeah.
which we don't want or we don't need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. Well, and I love the word deliberate too. It's absolutely a part of my personal definition of what it means to be intentional, right? Like
Yes.
that 100%. And then the next word in my definition is decisiveness, right?
Yeah.
So it has to be deliberate, but also has to be decisive, which kind of lines up with, the first couple, including assertiveness, right? Because I mean, to be decisive, you have to be sometimes assertive and just say, hey, this is the direction we're going. This is where we're going to take this thing. Win, lose, or draw. We'll figure it out when we get there, and then we'll recalibrate.
Exactly. And I like to tell people that the worst thing you can do is not make a decision. I would rather you make a decision and maybe fail than not make a decision at all. If you make a decision and fail, we can learn and grow from that.
Yeah.
But if you don't make a decision, there's nothing to learn. There's nowhere to grow. So exactly, decisiveness. Make a decision.
Yeah. I think it makes the process more personal too, right? Because if you're just sitting back and letting somebody else guide the decision making, right, and or do all the decision making I see this a lot in relationships, right, where men are very passive, right,
Yes.
And so they're very passive in the relationship and not decisive and not leading. And I'm sure I'll get in trouble for saying some of this stuff and being chauvinistic or something like that. But I do believe that men are supposed to lead in the relationship. And so when we get into these situations where for too long he's become passive, what actually starts to happen is there's an imbalance because, now his wife has to make these decisions all the time. And I'm not saying that she's not capable or shouldn't get to once in a while. There's a balance in every relationship and how you want to focus this out. But what I've seen in every one of our clients who's been with us for a long time, eventually comes through our relationship program, gets to sit down and work with my wife, is they have not been leading decisively for a certain amount of time. And she grew resentful of him. And so by way of that, he grew resentful of her. What I always say is all the times in life I've become the most resentful are always because of the times in life I was the least intentional.
Yeah. A key word is balance. It's all about balance and figuring out what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Because everyone's an individual.
Of course.
There's not one set path for anyone. I tell my wife all the time that I make decisions all day long. And you should make this decision today. I'm like, it's always easier to figure out. If my spouse makes a decision, I can't be in the wrong. So,
right. Yep.
So it's a happy wife, happy life. So.
Yep. We just had a conversation about this last night. We'd kind of, I believe what you're saying, right? There's a balance, right? I mean, it can't be completely dominant one way and completely dominant the other, and have there be some level of happiness. But we have a extremely high amount of logistics in our life right now comparatively to the rest of the year. Part of that's the holidays, but part of it's some other things that are going on, some stuff, changes that we've made in the business and so on and so forth. So I got home last night. I've been gone over the weekend, went and saw some family back in Minnesota for Christmas, and came home last night. And she's like, we got this, and this. And she's like, I just need you to take care of that. Can you just decide and then let's go? Cause I am like, I'm maxed out on my logistical capabilities.
That's intentional and it's clear messaging. It doesn't leave anything up to ambiguity. So at the end of the day, as a couple, you're not staring at each other and one saying, I thought you were going to do that. And then the other one saying, no, I told you to do that. So when you're intentional, deliberate, and clear, it makes everything a whole lot easier. So good,
man. Well, we spent 15 minutes on our first question today, John, and we didn't even get into giving you a chance to introduce Teleos yourself a little bit. John's the president of Teleos. Why don't you talk a little bit about what the company is, what you guys do, what the purpose is, and feel free to share a little bit more about your Navy background if that's relevant.
Thank you, Mark. So, in all truth and honesty, I just started with Teleos, started on February 1st. Mm-hmm. Actually, that was the same day that I retired from the Navy. I spent 23 years in the Navy. Primary role as a helicopter pilot, but in naval aviation, I would say, especially my community, flying is about 30% of your job. The other 70% is what you call your ground job. Mm-hmm. And you're changing ground jobs about every 12 to 18 months.
Sure.
And so the good thing is that you have so many different roles, jobs, and occupations in the military other than being an actual pilot. It really prepares you a lot, what I found, for the civilian world. Once you leave the military, you understand a lot of stuff. Some stuff you don't understand. But I feel very prepared from my military experience. Yeah. Had a great time. Wouldn't change those 20 plus years for anything. Got to travel the world, see a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. I flew helicopters for a living. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Before that, back in high school and college, I was in agriculture. I was in soil fumigation. So about 3 months before military retirement, when the opportunity arose to get back into agriculture, as president of Teleos, I jumped at the opportunity. Always loved agriculture, grew up on tractors, grew up around farms. My dad has been in agriculture, so it's really in my blood. I love the dirt. I love growing stuff. So this is a fantastic opportunity and a fantastic company to work for. At Teleos, we're primarily involved in soil fumigation. We're the global distributors for a soil fumigant called Telone. It's Dow owned, Dow branded. The scientific name is 1,3-dichloropropane, and is primarily responsible to attack and kill nematodes in the soil. Little microscopic worms which attack the roots of crops, inhibiting growth, and also root type vegetables attacking the bodies of those. World's premier nematicide. We purchase from Dow. It's made in 3 different locations around the globe, so we purchase from those. And then we sell to a distribution network made up of both affiliate companies of my parent company, Teleos Soil Solutions, and then other large agriculture distributors.
Beautiful. Very cool. How's the first almost a year? It'll be almost a year by the time this comes out, actually. So how's the first year in the role been?
It's been fantastic, Mark. It has been definitely challenging and frustrating, but also very rewarding at the same time. Getting to I feel like I'm kind of in the military again because I'm surrounded by such a great team of subject matter experts. Fantastic team here at Teleos. I couldn't be more pleased to land and be part of this group. Then also the global nature of Teleos is very similar to the military, the global operations. We have operations at Teleos here in the U.S., in Europe, which covers Europe, Middle East, and Africa, and then also a branch in Japan that covers the Far East and Asia. Wow. I'm used to global operations, so it kind of feels like home being able to be a citizen of the world again. A lot of travel, but I'm used to most of my trips normally are in the past were 6 to 12 months at a time. So a week or two is a whole lot easier. And I will say The quality of life is a little bit better sleeping in hotel rooms rather than a ship that's rocking and rolling and moving throughout the night.
I would imagine.
A little bit different. But I've had a great first year, a lot of growth, a lot of learning involved, and just looking to get better and better each year, both as a company and as an individual and a leader for the company.
Fantastic. Very cool. Well, what if you think back over the course of your career, John, what's what's been one of those big challenges that you've had to overcome? I'm sure there's many being in the military, but I'm sure people would love to hear what are some of those challenges. And after that, we'll get to a win. But what was one of the big challenges that sort of defined you?
Kind of when you look very introspectively, I would say a major challenge I face each and every day is fear of failure. So that creates a sense of self-doubt, both in the military and in Teleos, and also my personal life. So whether it's coworkers or family, it's a fair failure of letting those people down.
Sure.
And then you kind of let that self-doubt creep in, that you could fail and you could let those people down. And the last thing you want to do is let your team down. So
absolutely.
So that's really, something that I face both in the military and in civilian life. So, but it is something that you work on each and every day to improve. So, in the military, we always talk about preparedness, and that's learning your trade, learning the aircraft, so that if you have an issue, and you have to fight the emergency, it comes out automatically, and your hands are doing stuff that you really without even thinking. But and also a way to overcome it, other than education and being an expert and having the most knowledge, is relying on your strengths while focusing and improving on areas which are weaknesses. So you really need to be self-aware and honest with yourself. But always remember, you're surrounded by a team. You have experts to rely on. So, if there's areas that I'm weak in, I know that I have a team to support me. My job is to ensure that they have the tools to perform their jobs.
Right. Yeah. Very good. I love it. It's so important, when you think about, we have a tool called Strength Scope that we deploy with certain clients. And what it does, it highlights the parts of the parts of your brain, so to speak. It's not a brain scan, but it's a psychometric assessment that shows you what areas do you really light up in? Where do you drive the most energy? When I do these types of activities, I keep getting more and more energy the more I do it. To contrast that, I also have areas that the more I do them, the more tired I get.
Oh yes,
right?
Yes, repetition. Right?
Exactly. Yep. So, for me, it's detail, right? Detail is not my thing. So we create a system, right? And I just ask, the team, like, hey, so here's the thing. We're going to go out here, somebody's going to help book the interviews. I'm going to do the interviews. and I can sit down, because that's the part. This is relationship building. It's teaching. It's all the stuff that lights me up. The stuff that lights me up is building relationships, meeting new people, developing others. Right. Those are the kind of things that I get paid to do. And then I pass it off to someone else who can do the details. Right. And I won't see this thing until it goes live on Spotify and it hits, it pops up on my phone. So, you have to build those people and teams around you to be able to execute against some of those processes. However, right, there are just certain things we have to do that are obvious, that are always going to just grind against our strengths. Maybe it calls you to have to use something that's more of a weakness. Maybe it's something that, just something you don't like doing. We all have things we don't like to do. Yes. So, and I'm guessing being in the military, you had to do a few things that weren't exactly your idea. So how do you compensate? How would you advise people to work through that?
It's for me, I don't like conflict as much, kind of
Mm-hmm.
interpersonal conflict.
Sure.
So if someone messes up, or you have to give bad news, or um, those types of actions,
Mm-hmm.
HR-based actions, I really dislike, and I try to avoid. The thing, you just have to kind of grit your teeth and know you have to do it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It has to be done. There's no way to avoid it. But I always try to frame it as a teaching and learning moment, rather than what you would call a punishment, or in a derogatory sense.
Sure.
So that's where I find a lot of difficulty.
You bet. Yeah. Well, and that stuff is never, ever fun. Anytime that we have to correct behavior or give negative feedback, and I've received plenty of it and I've given plenty of it, and it's never fun.
No,
No,
human
no.
beings, we hate to receive it,
Yeah.
and we hate to send it as
Right.
well.
Yep.
It's difficult. So you really have to dig deep and figure out how, for me, how would I want to receive this message, and that's what you implement in your approach in giving the message, Mark.
Yep. And this is where, like, I love coming back to, the dam class as, from an analogy standpoint, because to me, that's like a playbook, right? Or a play in the playbook that I need in a certain situation. We need to run this play. I just need to keep this front of mind.
Yeah.
When we do sales training, we think about, we teach an overcoming objections framework, right? And it's 4 or 5 letters, it's an acronym, and it's designed to be that it's the play that you run when somebody's pushing back against your ideas. Right. And if you can learn that play and just sense, and like, it's not the same objection every time, but the play is always the same.
Yeah. I think if we look back at that DAM class, like you mentioned, you look at the tenets, assertiveness and leadership. They fall right into what we're discussing right now, Mark.
Yep. Absolutely. Good stuff. Okay. What's been one of the big wins over the course of your career?
Growing up, I was always a fan of history, and read a lot of books and great leaders throughout history. And joining the military, that was one of the key factors that drew me to the military, is the ability to lead. So being able to be a detachment OIC officer in charge, borrow a multi-million-dollar aircraft from the Department of Defense, $1 million in parts and pieces to work on the aircraft, and a full team of staff, both administrative, logistics, and also mechanic type staff. Jump on a ship, go out to sea for 9 months. Lead, bring everyone back home safely with 10 fingers and 10 toes, and a fully intact operational helicopter. Probably the highlight of my career.
That's cool.
Just being able to go and perform the mission safely, effectively, with a fantastic team. It doesn't get too much better than that. Other than that, some big wins. I truthfully love seeing the success of others who work for me, and knowing that I've played a small part in their success.
Yeah.
Whether it's an accolade, achievement, a promotion, getting wins for people who work with me and for me is what really drives me as an individual. Small example: when I was my last job before retirement, I was executive officer of Naval Air Station Pensacola. During that time, we won the award from the Navy for the Naval Installation of the Year. So best Navy base around the world. And the way I look at it, it wasn't my award; it was our award. And, we were able to achieve that by everyone performing their job to the best of the ability.
Yeah.
For me to play a small role in that, to empower everyone to be able to perform their jobs to the best of their ability, that's why it's our award, not my award. So, my greatest wins come from others getting wins.
I love it. To me, that's the true mark of a truly intentional leader, right? Because it does take foresight and intuition and all the things that we've been talking about: leadership, communication, crew resource management, right? To really be able to curate that experience. One of the things I have said over the years is that I believe that to be a thriving leader, anyway, all leaders have a moral obligation to create environments within which their people can thrive.
Exactly. Create a culture of success, Mark.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So what are you doing now? You're at the helm of Teleos. What are you doing to curate that culture in your space now?
So I'm going to go back to the Navy, especially in my community where we deploy. Sometimes it's not a whole operational squadron, but a small detachment. It's really that team concept, Mark. It's everyone working toward a singular goal. So, our effort in the detachment, all the efforts were directed to safely launching and flying, executing a mission. And it takes a full team to do that. So it's really building that team concept. And it's not the success of one, it's the success of everyone. And it's really creating a culture where everyone buys in toward that combined goal, that end state that we want to get to. So trying to bring a team-based approach from the Navy into the military, where we're all directed toward the same goal and everyone has that buy-in, toward success.
I really love it.
And if we get back to intentionality, and the way that we do that as a team is, first off, I like to define the problem or issue that we're trying to solve or fix. And then we set our goal or the end state that we need to achieve. And then the entire team's direction and focus is creating a plan of actions to accomplish that goal. So good. With everyone involved and playing their part, that's how we get there.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. This won't come from our list of questions that we try to get into, but I am curious. I mean, I'm sure there's pushback, right, from time to time. Like, you're inheriting a culture that you didn't curate, right, that you didn't create. And I think this is where a lot of our listeners struggle sometimes, is how do I get the buy-in? How do we, and so I'm actually really curious. So, I mean, I know in the military you have chain of command and you just sort of just get to do it. but they're also, I mean, within the decision-making, within the levels of decision-making, there has to be work that goes into creating buy-in. Right?
Yeah. Yes. Let me start off by saying, I stepped into a great team, great company. So it is not like a company where it's broken and I need to come in and fix it. I really, it's running and it's running well. I'm just trying to make a couple small tweaks here and there. It's not broke, don't fix it. But I really emphasize decision making at the correct level. We'll go back to that damn class, that first tenet, decision making. So, empowering those below me to make decisions. I don't need to make decisions, nor do I have the time or the bandwidth to make every decision. So by pushing those decisions down the chain to the correct level and allowing the team, the individuals, to be able to make decisions, I think that goes a long way toward building that team concept. Because if they're able to make decisions at their level, they're buying into that end goal, that end state that we're trying to achieve.
That's really fascinating. I don't know. I mean, we talk about delegation all the time, and that it's a good, healthy
Yeah.
to delegate. Delegating to others helps them, helps those who are delegated to build skill sets and try new things and have responsibility. But when you break it down into saying, hey, no, it's very common for someone at the top of the food chain to just make the decisions and then pass that information along. But you're actually breaking it down and saying, hey, if you don't need to be the one to make that decision, and it would benefit somebody who's 2 or 3 levels down in the organization to be the one who gets to make that call, let them do it. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
I just got a call with one of our team right before we started this call, and he wanted to make some changes to the way that we operate. I told him, okay, you get with these 3 people. If you 3 are all good with it, if it will improve the way that we operate, it's your decision. Right. It's your decision. You make it.
You bet.
I don't need to make it.
Yep. I love it. Well, very cool. What do you have a favorite book on leadership or otherwise that sticks out?
So, there's a million books on leadership. So I'm going to go against the grain a little bit, because a lot of the books, people read it and they take it for the gospel, and they try to take it, hey, this is the blueprint I need to follow, and everyone's different. I would say if you're reading books on leadership, take out the best practices from those, take what works for you, read many books, not just one. But something maybe a little bit different is a author by the name of Gary Chapman. Probably one of the most famous books he wrote was The 5 Love Languages.
Yeah.
Also another book, Speaking My Language. And, and you can take those principles and use those anywhere. They're relationship-based books.
Yes. Yep.
But I really like them because it for me, it devolves down into just general humanity. And, everyone, we're all human and we need something. So, and these books are, for me, are not just a way to interact with my spouse or my family, but interact with anyone I meet throughout the day, and especially those within my company and within Teleos. So figuring out how people want to be treated, and thinking about that, how you would like to be treated, goes a long way anywhere you are. It doesn't matter if it's your spouse or someone checking you out at the grocery store, or some of your employees is speaking to them, interacting with them in the same way that you would like to be interacted, and figuring out what works for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've recommended to our clients so many times over the years to take the love language assessment. And really, it's like, it's not, I don't know, some guys are weirded out by it. Some people are like, oh, it's what my wife's going to think something's wrong if I'm bringing this up. I'm like, no, man, like, she's going to love it. If you start speaking her love language on a regular basis because you actually sat down and took the time to get in touch and then have conversations about it, it's a free assessment. It takes you 2 minutes. You can Google it and it's free, and there's no excuse not to go do that. And I think, Gary's books, Gary Chapman, for those of you guys that are listening, authored The 5 Love Languages, and then several other, I think Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I think that was his book as well, was it not?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so.
But Mark, we all need some sort of affirmation in our life, and this really kind of gets down to that root, and just knowing that human interactions and affirmation goes a long way, because a negative interaction with someone can be just as influential as a positive interaction.
Sure.
So if we have a mentality and focus on positive interactions, that goes a long way toward being an intentional leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, I could not agree more. Could not agree more. So good. John, we have covered so many good things in this podcast today. We're pushing up on our time here, and we're going to bring it in for landing. Any last thoughts that you'd want to share with the group?
So one other thing, beforehand, there was a note about vulnerability.
Yeah. Yep.
Vulnerability. That's tough concept to say I'm vulnerable, or open yourself.
Yeah. To be vulnerable. Yeah.
And we were talking about Navy processes, and if I'm thinking about vulnerability in terms of the business world, I look at it as the ability to accept risk. And just as we did with the other principles, I brought in a new the Navy process on how we accept risk, and looking at it through ORM, operational risk management. In the Navy, we have a 5-step process, and I'm trying to adapt that toward the civilian world. Those five steps are: ID the hazards, assess the hazards, make risk decisions, implement controls, and supervise. So by following that process, it allows me to be vulnerable and accept a certain amount of risk, because I'm doing my homework. I'm approaching it through a repeatable process. And once I know my risk, I'm able to mitigate those risks to the best of my ability, and then make a decision. Be assertive, make a decision, and try to figure out what's best for Teleos, what's best for TSS through that lens, that process, being vulnerable, because you have to accept risk.
Yeah.
Or you're never going to grow. You're never going to grow as a company or as an individual. So just something, I think another military kind of operational based focus planning process that I really adhere to, and I implement now into Teleos.
I love it. So good. And I've never heard vulnerability defined that way, right? The ability to accept risk. And that's actually that's super accurate. That may be the best definition I've ever seen.
It was fantastic when you sent me some questions to look over and think about. Just the process and the exercise for me of thinking about these, slowing down a little bit, getting away from my daily routine, and focus on myself as a leader, and actually think about some of these concepts. And am I using them? Am I not using them? What do I need to improve on? How do I improve? How do I get better? Because we need continual self-improvement. And this has just been a fantastic exercise for me.
You bet.
To see where I am, see what I need to do to grow and improve.
Yeah, I love it. That's why all of our coaching programs are all question-based.
Yes.
Right? They're very, very Socratic in nature. And I mean, do we get on and teach once in a while? Of course, we're going to have to, we got to teach concept or an acronym, or whatever. And what does it mean? But then we put everything for the rest of our coaching calls is all asking people questions, getting them to think through it. And it's an important aspect of, part of the value in the coaching is just actually having an hour a couple times a month blocked off to go work on yourself, which most people just don't have.
We all stay so busy in our daily lives, but it's very important to take a break from that and have some personal time for introspection and personal growth. And asking yourself questions and then forcing yourself to answer those questions is very, very beneficial. It's tough sometimes, but it's something that needs to be done. A lot of times we just like to push those thoughts away, or I'll deal with that tomorrow. But when you sit down and force yourself to do it, you're going to grow as both an individual, both in your personal life and your professional life, I believe.
You bet. 100%. Man, John, this has been a really cool interview. We could, it seems like we could keep going on and probably find more frameworks and acronyms and things to deploy. But I just want to say, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for your service to our country. We very much appreciate this. And, man, any last thoughts that you want to drop on the group before we are on the audience before we close her down?
Well, thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Mark. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. Thank you for making me go through this exercise of thinking about myself and as a leader. But the last thoughts is use your team. Rely on your team. As a leader, you should be devoted to growing that team, ensuring that they succeed so you succeed as a leader.
Yeah.
Truthfully, people are everything. That's without those surrounding us. If we go through life as an individual, a lone wolf, it's going to be a tough road. So really take that into account and, be vulnerable, be deliberate, and be intentional, Mark.
I love it, man. All right, John, thanks for doing this interview. It's been really cool getting to know you.
Thank you. Anytime.